What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Drip Sauce, and today we're gonna be debunking Seth, the L-Grammer, because apparently he thinks Saber is out of Versal and beats Goku. So let's just check out his scale.
Servants in Fate are usually based on mythological entities or concepts brought to reality by an omnipotent wishing device known as the Holy Grail.
I think it would actually be nice if you actually proved what you said every once in a while, because you just made two positive claims with no evidence. First, you said that the servants are usually based off of mythological beings or concepts without proving that, and you also asserted that they were brought to life by an omnipotent wishing device known as the Holy Grail, but you never provided evidence as to why the Holy Grail would be omnipotent. You just made the claim, so there's no way we can know if this is true without you backing it up with evidence. Because if you're trying to educate people, then you should at least provide sources as to everything you're saying, because not everyone watches Fate and not everyone knows about the verse, and you're clearly trying to educate the people with intent of educating them about the cosmology or the scaling, so you should provide evidence to every single thing you say. Otherwise, some things can just be dismissed via Hitchens razor.
These servants are usually capable of destroying almost entire armies on their own.
I'm not really gonna touch this one because I don't really have a problem with army level feats,
changing the fate of the world.
He proceeds to provide zero evidence as to how they changed the fate of the world. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying these characters don't have these feats, but as I explained earlier, if you're trying to teach people about something, then you should at least provide all the evidence you need. You don't just show us a clip of someone swinging a sword and then you say, oh, he's changing the fate of the world. Like, how do we know that is true?
And destroying pretty much anything on it.
Kind of vague, but it checks out, so I'll just let that one slide.
Difficulty with me explaining why Saber would absolutely destroy Goku.
Oh my
God. Superman, SpongeBob, or
I'm the product of what happens when you post something cursed as fuck! Call me Delito! Delete this shit!
whoever the is that servants in Fate are heavily restricted in what they're actually allowed to do when they appear. Not necessarily in their power, even though that can be the case, but their effects on the environment or planet are limited to a level that you wouldn't see in a normal show. For instance, in Dragon Ball, when Vegeta wants to blow up the planet, he can, right? He has enough power to do it. Nothing's stopping him. Same goes with Frieza or Kaguya from Naruto or Superman from DC or Yuha from Bleach or literally SpongeBob SquarePants with a string. But in Fate, destroying a planet or something requires more than it would take to destroy a planet, because the planet itself is actually protected by a higher entity that restricts these omnipotently born servants from impacting its fate. Hence kind of the name of the show. This is because of a phenomena called the counterforce, which is basically the will of the earth itself that defends it. Good proof of this, outside the obvious I just showed on the screen, is that we actually see servants in other media, all media being basically canon for Fate. I'm not joking. The mobile game, every video game, every visual novel, anime, it's all canon. Being able to fight entities that can literally become larger than planets and use them as, yeah. Anyway, you get the idea. These servants from these games actually scale to the ones in the show, sometimes being even weaker or stronger, but that's just sort of a basic level breakdown. Servants can easily destroy fortresses, mountains, and fight crazy godlike beings that can easily destroy a planet. But Nasu, the author of the Fate verse, goes a step beyond that, into a level of bat crazy for no reason that unironically makes Saber one of the strongest characters in all of fiction, period. Making these Fate servants become something you'd see more from a Cthulhu eldritch deity.
I cannot believe that Seth just compared the Fate series to Cthulhu mythos, bro. Like, what the hell, bro?
And not an anime girl. Well, some of these anime girls are actually pretty much eldritch deities. but it's confusing. Anyway, the baseline for strong fate scaling is usually considered to be around when a character named BB is introduced. BB is a backup AI programmed by another character named Sakura that is so powerful that it can hack into and manipulate reality itself. The way it does this is by hacking into and absorbing a construct called the Moon Cell, and the Moon Cell is a supercomputer often considered on the level of the omnipotent Holy Grails, and this supercomputer's purpose is to record all things that have ever occurred and can manipulate the laws of physics, view the past, present, and future of the universe, and even culling dead parallel universes entirely from the multiverse. BB then obtains all these abilities by breaking into the final barrier of this Moon Cell, which is 8th dimensional in nature.
Nowhere in the scans does it say 8-dimensional, it just says 8 dimensions, which can literally mean anything, and it doesn't even specify if the dimensions infinitely transcend the last. It's just going off of an assumption that it does.
As a reminder, our universe is 3 to 4th dimensional, and anything beyond 5th would view us as fiction or non-existent in comparison to it.
Notice how in the scan he sends it literally specifies that it's talking about something that's higher dimensional, as it states that it's giving an example basically that a being from a higher dimensional existence would basically view a lower dimension as flat or finite or akin to fiction. This is actually truth to the matter that in Fate, when they want to describe something higher dimensional, they will straight up say it is higher dimensional. They won't just give a vague statement of 8 dimensions and then just expect it to be taken as higher dimensional, because they literally just said higher dimensional, which means that that statement of 8 dimensions is probably not referring to 8-dimensional constructs, but take it as you may.
BB not only reaches this 5th level, but the 8th dimension by doing so. BB is then later defeated by the servants in Fate Extra, which would be Saber Nero, Caster Tamamo, Archer Emiya, and Gilgamesh. Saber Nero is pretty much just weaker Red Artoria, which is later proven in Fate Extella when Artoria is summoned into the war between Red Saber and Tamamo from the Moon Cell to stop them. Even if she isn't stronger or weaker, she is at least relative enough to face these servants that possibly halted the plans of an 8th dimensional reality warping entity. Normally, my skepticism would then kick in here, and I would say, what if this 8th dimensional construct is a barrier literally made with 8 separate dimensions acting as a wall, rather than an 8th dimensional mathematical concept or principle? However, when you read all of Fate's materials, you'll begin to see that its author and the many characters do mention actual dimensional theory quite literally many times, meaning it's actually Nasu's knowledge and ability to then write these mathematical concepts without a lot of headcanon or assumptions involved.
Notice how he says when you read a lot of Fate's materials, well, he only provides one valid scan or a valid piece of evidence referring to that, which is literally the scan I just addressed that can be addressed as a different scenario. Now, just because something has a relation to the other doesn't necessarily mean they have to be the same. For example, in this scan he showed where he's trying to form as a link to it, he's trying to say that, Fate, they have higher dimensions, so it's probably referring to higher dimensions, but that doesn't have to be the case, because if they were referring to higher dimensions within that context, they would have put the word higher dimensions instead of just dimensions, or they would have just put dimensional with the AL and not just NS, because in Fate literally you just proved that when they're referring to higher dimensions they put higher dimensional or higher dimensions, but in the scan you provided about 8 dimensions. It doesn't specify anything like that. It's just talking about 8 dimensions, which can literally just mean, as you said, a barrier protecting the whatever you were talking about. So that would just be a false cause fallacy.
Example, the very first mention of dimensional theory is in Fate Stay Night and Fate Zero, which I'll show on the screen now, and these two are the first Fates ever. So Nasu has known about these theories for a long time.
Now, as I explained earlier, the same debunk would apply. Simply a mention of something that is inherently similar in certain aspects doesn't necessarily make everything that has similarities with that said thing to have the exact same properties or attributes.
Nasu is known for doing a lot of research on the history of his servants and characters as well, and Plato is literally a servant who kind of, made things like Platonic concepts, etc. You get it.
Nerd alert!
You see, this is why I say a lot of the power scalers we have today are falling off, because what they do now is downplay Dragon Ball even though there's verbatim evidence that scales it higher, and then wank other verses with different bullshit. So on my channel I actually have a video that's dedicated to debunking Platonism or Platonic concepts in context to scaling. Platonism is completely useless and scales nowhere. If you want to find out why, my video is up there, you can go watch it right now.
Anyway, heroic spirits ascended to the throne of heroes, which resides within the swirl of roots, or Akasha records, and the root is basically so complex and above all else that the author believes that even describing it in any concept or terms is actually doing it a disservice. He actually believes that there is no way to word it without even downplaying it.
Now, the context behind this scan is the inability of the characters in question to be able to conceptualize or give a reasonable definition or be able to fathom this place. Now, just because you're not able to describe something doesn't inherently remove it from any aspect of tiering or any level or putting it above any said level, because that would just be a fallacious line in reasoning, and that will kind of be like a no limits fallacy, because you're asserting that because something cannot be described, it means it inherently isn't a dimensional construct, because you're trying to say it's out-of-versal, which we'll get into later on. The exact context behind higher dimensions, etc., is the fact that they cannot be fathomed or comprehended by regular beings. So the fact that this place is unfathomable in context of the character's perspective could just mean that it's a higher dimension. And you know, authors tend to have this kind of hyperbolic, poetic writing, so it could just be a super hyperbolic expression or description that the author is trying to give within this context. It doesn't inherently give it any more higher scaling or anything insane like out-of-versal. I think it's just fallacious.
It is always just blank or beyond our comprehension entirely.
I don't see any statement of it being beyond our comprehension in that scan, and the thing is that I don't even know what you're talking about when you're saying it's beyond our comprehension. Like, what's the context? Also, something being beyond comprehension doesn't really inherently scale it higher, as comprehension is just basically understanding of something, and if you don't understand something, that doesn't inherently make it something higher. For example, if you saw a shapeless object floating in the air and was just shifting form over and over, you wouldn't be able to comprehend what you're seeing, because it's something you don't understand. You've never seen that thing before, so it would obviously be beyond your comprehension. It doesn't inherently make it higher in terms of scaling. So that's the thing about these kinds of statements. We have to be really careful following context, and we have to be able to read context in order not to be able to wank the shit out of these kinds of statements.
Beyond the concepts of space and time, beyond concepts pretty much period, even outside of the story, it can't be explained.
It doesn't say it governs the concepts of space and time, it just says it governs dimensional theory. Now, you need to be very specific when you're going about these statements. What dimensional theory is it referring to? It's referring to string theory, superstring theory, bosonic theory, membrane theory, tag marks. You need to specify what dimensional theory it's referring to. If it's not specified, then we can't just assert a value to it, or we can't just assert that it's above all types of dimensional theory, because it literally specifies that it's referring to a form of dimensional theory. Now, if there's no specification for a dimensional theory, that would just mean that we'll just have to go off of what the cosmology has presented, and basically the cosmology hasn't really presented much, so we can't just say it's above all dimensional theory. That would kind of be like illogical.
So these servants then born from it can do crazy things, or even trying to tap into it can also do crazy things. Who would have thought? But Saber's only purpose was not to stop the servants from fighting after BB when she was summoned by the Moon Cell. Her true purpose was to stop a being known as Safar, who's kind of like Fate's Galactus. The same servants that defeat BB could only barely scratch Safar, while Artoria as a servant is considered on a completely different level, and she simply Excaliburs Safar away in numerous timelines. Safar, in her avatar body known as Altera, swings around the Sword of Mars, which is stated to be the embodiment of the concept of cutting. which will become important for these servants in the next point. One thing Saber actually does that might be a little mind-blowing and potentially, it caught me off guard when I researched into it, unintended, because of how absurd it is. Do you remember when Saber fought this guy? He's kind of a nothing character almost, right? Very overshadowed by characters like Hercules and Gilgamesh inside the 5th Holy Grail War. But what if I told you this dude himself would probably slam any version of Goku ever thought of in existence?
Even if she was out of her soul, base Buu Saga Dragon Ball Z Goku would still body the fuck out of her.
This guy, with a very unique swordplay of his that Saber can counter somehow. And I don't know how she does this, so don't ask. She's just that plot amped and broken, which is what I'm trying to tell y'all. But this technique, known as the Tsubame Geishi, breaks the rules of reality and allows Assassin Kojiro to disregard the concepts of space and time entirely via applications of something called the second true magic, the multi-dimensional refraction phenomenon, more commonly known as the kaleidoscope.
You can already tell that this is the meat and bones of his entire skill, and if you debunk this, congratulations, you successfully debunked Outerversal Saber. Now, on my channel, I've covered multiple times why the concepts of space and time don't inherently scale you to Outerversal. It is very context-based, and you have to be extremely careful following these kinds of words. Now, you can go to this video where I explain it in full detail. It's right there on my channel. You can go watch it right now, and you can come back to this video once you've understood everything. Now, the context behind that scan is basically that his sword ignores the distance between two objects, so his sword basically ignores the space, and it's able to hit you like instantaneously. It's similar to the attack from Misfits, which Anos was able to avoid. It doesn't inherently scale your sword to Outerversal or anything like that. In all, it just means that your sword can ignore distance between two objects, which could give it some kind of like instantaneous hit hacks, but it doesn't inherently scale you to Outerversal. But it does upscale your speed to around a measurable speed. Also, like I said, the word concept doesn't necessarily have to mean the absolute ensemble. It could just be referring to an idea of the distance between two things. There's no specification or proof that it's referring to an actual abstract concept that actually governs dimensionality itself. It's just referring to something idealistic or mental. It doesn't necessarily have to be an abstract conceptual thing that necessarily is, in this case, Outerversal.
The true magics are different to standard magecraft, as they are only obtained by maguses who have touched the root itself, the thing that made all thing, that is beyond all things. And while fighting this assassin Kojiro is on such a different level that the visual novel describes Kojiro's slashes as being beyond Saber's ability to literally perceive attacks from the future.
Okay, now you gotta give your boy Drip Sauce some credit. I literally have a video on my channel explaining why things from the future or past, or things relating to time travel, etc. don't grant you any speed tiers. So you gotta give me some credit right here. Like, I literally have a video for everything, bro. I'm too goated, bro. So basically, Saber would get packed up by Superman, SpongeBob, and almost any version of Goku whatsoever, and it's not even gonna be close, bro. So that's basically why Saber is fodder and Seth is gradually falling off of his seat of glory. If you disagree, my Discord server will be linked in the description below, and basically, if you like my content, please subscribe, like, share. And I do have multiple interesting videos, scales of Dragon Ball on my channel, so if you like all things Dragon Ball related, please do be sure to check those out. And it's been your boy Drip Sauce, and peace out.
This day has made it all too clear. You're better than me, Kakarot.